There is a silence inside you that frightens you. You are sitting across from a friend, or perhaps a partner. They are pouring their heart out, tears streaming down their face, their voice cracking with the weight of a recent tragedy. You watch them. You hear the words. You understand intellectually that this is a moment of profound sadness. You know you should be reaching out, mirroring their grief, dissolving into the shared pool of emotion. But instead, you feel nothing. It is not that you are malicious. It is not that you enjoy their suffering. It is simply that a glass wall has descended between your soul and the world. You are watching a movie of a sad person rather than sitting with a human being. And in the quiet of your own mind, a terrifying thought begins to take root. Am I broken? Am I a monster? Have I lost the ability to love? If this resonates with you, if you have felt the sudden, icy grip of detachment in moments where heat is expected, listen closely. You are not a monster. You are not a sociopath. You are experiencing a sophisticated biological and psychological defense mechanism that Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychiatrist, spent a lifetime decoding. You are not empty. You are full to the point of bursting, and your system has engaged an emergency protocol. Society tells you that empathy must be constant. We are told that to be a good person means to be perpetually available, an open vein bleeding for everyone else's pain. But this is a biological impossibility. What you are calling coldness is actually a survival strategy. It is what we might call the emotional firewall. Think of your mind like a high-end computer server. When too much data floods the system, too many demands, too much trauma, too much noise from the collective unconscious, the circuitry risks overheating. If the heat rises too high, the hardware melts. To prevent total system failure, your brain flips a switch. It cuts the connection. The lights go out in the empathy centers of the brain, not because they are broken, but because they are saving the house from burning down. This state, this numbness, is not a defect. It is a sign of a rare and potent constitution. It suggests that you are one of the few who feels too deeply, sees too clearly, and carries too much. The numbness is the only way your psyche knows how to keep you alive. But here is the secret that most psychology overlooks. This detachment is not just a shield. It is the raw material of a superpower. If you can learn to control this switch, to toggle the firewall on and off at will, you evolve. You move from being a numb victim of life to becoming what Jung might describe as the lucid observer. You become the person who can stand in the middle of a chaotic emergency room or a family crisis or a collapsing business and remain perfectly, terrifyingly calm. While others drown in panic, you float. You can act. You can solve. You can heal others precisely because you are not bleeding with them. However, there is a trap. If you do not understand this mechanism, if you leave the firewall up for too long, the isolation becomes permanent. The silence stops being a shield and becomes a tomb. You risk severing your tether to humanity completely. To understand why this happens to you, we must look at the intersection of Carl Jung's depth psychology and modern neuroscience. Jung believed that the psyche is a self-regulating system. Just as the body sweats to cool down or shivers to warm up, the psyche employs compensatory attitudes. If your conscious life is overwhelmed by the irrational demands of others, the unconscious swings hard in the opposite direction, toward extreme logic and icy detachment. Modern neuroscience validates this Jungian intuition. We now know about mirror neurons, the cells in our brain that fire when we see someone else in pain, allowing us to feel what they feel. For the rare mind, for the person who is naturally hypersensitive or highly intuitive, these mirror neurons are not just active, they are hyperactive. You are constantly downloading the emotional states of everyone around you. the anxiety of your boss, the depression of your spouse, the aggression of the stranger on the subway. Eventually, the physiological cost becomes too high. Your cortisol levels spike. Your nervous system stays in a chronic state of fight or flight. To survive, your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, steps in and inhibits the limbic system, the emotional center. It effectively says, "No more." This is compassion bankruptcy. You have spent all your emotional currency, and the bank has closed its doors. Jung saw this phenomenon often in his most advanced patients. He did not try to force them to feel again immediately. He understood that this withdrawal was a necessary descent. He might compare it to the alchemical stage of decomposition, where the old self must break down and rot before the gold can be found. You are in the winter of the soul. And winter is not dead, it is dormant. It is waiting. But the feeling is frightening, isn't it? You worry that the thaw will never come. You look at others laughing, crying, engaging in the messy drama of life, and you feel like an alien species observing earthlings from behind a pane of glass. This sense of alienation is actually the first marker of the individuation process, the journey toward becoming your true, whole self. Most people never reach this stage because they never detach enough to see the strings that control them. They are puppets of the collective, feeling exactly what they are told to feel, reacting exactly how they are programmed to react. But by detaching, even involuntarily, you have cut the strings. You are free, but you are also alone. This is the price of the rare mind. Let us look at this through the lens of a specific archetype, a story that might mirror your own. Consider the case of a man we will call the architect. This is not necessarily a builder of buildings, but a builder of systems, someone who holds their world together. The architect is the one everyone calls when things go wrong. He is the rock, he is the solution. For years, the architect absorbs the chaos of his family and his company. He listens, he fixes, he absorbs. He prides himself on his endurance. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, sitting in a meeting, a colleague begins to weep about a personal crisis. The old architect would have offered a tissue, a word of comfort, a solution. But the new architect just watches. He notes the tears on the cheek as mere physics, water rolling down skin. He feels a sudden, sharp irritation. "Why are you doing this?" he thinks. "Stop making noise." Later that night, he drives home in silence. He walks into his house, greets his family, and feels like a ghost haunting his own life. He touches his wife's arm and registers the texture of her skin, but the electrical charge of affection is gone. He is terrified. He thinks he has fallen out of love. He thinks he has lost his soul. Perhaps you are like the architect. You have confused your capacity to endure pain with an infinite supply of energy. You have burned the candle at both ends, and now the flame has vanished. Jung would say that the architect has been possessed by his persona, the mask he wears for the world. He became so good at being the strong one that his inner child, the part of him that needs and feels and plays, was shoved into the cellar and locked the door. The numbness the architect feels is the banging on that cellar door. It is the unconscious refusal to continue playing the role. The coldness is actually a strike. The workers in the factory of his heart have walked off the job because the working conditions have become intolerable. This is a critical juncture. If the architect tries to force himself to care, if he fakes the emotions to please others, he deepens the fracture. He creates a false self that will eventually crumble, leading to a total breakdown. But if he accepts the coldness, if he listens to what the silence is trying to tell him, he can begin the second half of his life. This brings us to a difficult question, one you must answer honestly. When you feel this detachment, is it truly because you feel nothing, or is it because you are terrified of feeling everything? Often, the emotional firewall is not keeping the world out. It is keeping the tsunami within you from destroying the world. You sense that if you let yourself feel just one drop of the sadness you have accumulated, the dam would break, and you would never stop weeping. So, the numbness is not an absence of feeling, it is the suspension of a deluge. Recognizing this difference is the key to unlocking the power of the rare mind. You are not lacking, you are protecting. But protection, if left unchecked, becomes a prison. So how do we lower the bridge without letting the enemy in? How do we turn this involuntary reflex into a conscious tool? To do this, we must first identify the specific type of detachment you are experiencing. Jungian psychology allows us to categorize these states, not to pathologize them, but to understand their function. There are stages to this withdrawal, and knowing where you stand is the only way to find the exit. The first stage is what we might call the gray fog. This is characterized by a general lack of motivation and a dulling of the senses. Food tastes bland. Music sounds like noise. You go through the motions of your day, performing your duties, but you are sleepwalking. This is the brain's low-power mode. It is the mildest form of preservation, usually following a period of high stress. The second stage is the obsidian wall. This is sharper, harder. This is where active irritation begins. You feel distinct annoyance when people demand your emotional attention. You start to fantasize about isolation, moving to a cabin in the woods, cutting off your phone, disappearing. This is a sign that your boundaries have been violated repeatedly, and your psyche is arming itself for a conflict. The third stage, and the most dangerous yet transformative, is the abyssal mirror. In this state, you feel less like a person and more like a high-definition camera. You are recording reality, the sights, the sounds, the words spoken, but you are not in reality. You are floating somewhere above it. This is total dissociation. This is where you might look at your own hands and wonder if they belong to you. Jung warned that this stage is precarious. It is the point of maximum tension between the conscious mind and the unconscious ocean. If you slip, you fall into nihilism, into a dark pit where nothing matters. But if you stand your ground, this is where the alchemist finds the gold. This is where you stop being a victim of your emotions and start becoming their master. You are no longer numb, you are neutral. And neutrality is a position of immense power. If you recognize yourself in any of these descriptions, whether you are in the gray fog, behind the obsidian wall, or staring into the abyssal mirror, I want you to pause for a moment. Do not just passively consume this video. Acknowledge your reality. Go down to the comments and write simply, "I am observing." By typing those words, you are signaling to your psyche that you are no longer afraid of the silence. You are claiming your seat as the watcher. Now, how do we integrate this? How do we take this terrifying coldness and turn it into the warmth of wisdom? The solution lies in a concept we will call aperture control. Think of a camera lens. If the aperture is wide open all the time, the image gets blown out by too much light, too much data, too much emotion. That is how you used to live. The coldness you feel now is your brain slamming the lens cap on. It is black. It is safe, but it is blind. The goal of the rare mind is not to tear the lens cap off and go back to being overwhelmed. The goal is to learn how to adjust the aperture manually. You must learn to let in just enough light to see, but not enough to burn the film. Jung called this the transcendent function, the ability to hold two opposing states at once. You must learn to be both compassionate and detached, simultaneously. This sounds like a paradox, but every great surgeon practices this every day. Imagine you are on an operating table. Do you want a surgeon who is weeping over your open body, shaking with empathy, feeling every ounce of your pain? No, you want a surgeon who is cold, precise, and steady. You want them to care about the outcome, not the sensation. You want them to have cognitive empathy, understanding what is wrong and how to fix it, without emotional contagion, catching your panic like a virus. Your numbness is trying to graduate you into the role of the surgeon. It is trying to teach you strategic dissociation. Modern neuroscience supports this shift. Studies on long-term meditators and first responders show that their brains process distress differently. They do not deactivate the empathy centers, they activate the pain regulation networks alongside them. They feel the spark, but they do not let it become a forest fire. So, the next time you are sitting across from that friend in crisis and you feel that familiar wall of ice, do not attack yourself. Do not force a fake smile. Instead, lean into the cold. Say to yourself, I am entering the observation deck. Visualize yourself stepping back. You are not the container for their pain. You are the space in which their pain is allowed to exist. You are the canvas, not the paint. By remaining calm, by not spiraling with them, you provide something far more valuable than tears. You provide stability. You become a lighthouse. And a lighthouse does not run around the beach frantically looking for boats to save. It stands still. It shines. And it lets the boats find the shore. This is the ultimate paradox of the rare mind. Only by remaining slightly detached can you truly be of service. Your coolness is a balm to the fever of the world. This path is not easy. It requires you to accept a degree of loneliness. You may never again feel the reckless, unthinking abandonment of the crowd. You may always feel like you are watching the party from the balcony. But the view from the balcony is clearer. You see the patterns. You see where people are hurting themselves before they even know it. You see the truth. Carl Jung believed that the purpose of human life was not happiness, but meaning. The process of individuation, of becoming who you truly are, demands that you separate yourself from the herd. The herd is warm, but it is unconscious. The rare mind is cool, but it is awake. You have been chosen, by your biology and your psychology, to carry the burden of consciousness. The numbness you feared was just the weight of the armor being placed upon your shoulders. It felt heavy because you were trying to fight it, wear it, adjust it, learn to move in it. You are not broken. You are simply built for a different function. You are here to observe, to understand, and to guide. The world is burning with reactive emotion. It needs your ice. It needs your sanity. Do not reject your nature. Embrace the silence within you. It is not an empty void. It is a vast, open sky. And in that sky, you finally have room to fly. See you in the next dimension.